All right. Hi. We're back. Sorry about that. Turns out my little computer can't handle TikTok live studio. So hopefully people will come on back now, and I'll just start a little later and do what I did before. But at least now I can see what everybody's saying. So much better. Yeah. So the announcements are I'm really excited, but the queer book, the cannabis graphic novel I wrote with my buddy Sumac 5 or 6 years ago, that we got published 5 years ago, and has been out of print for all that time. It's now back in print. I just sent the hi mom. I think that's my mom. And the Yeah, so I just sent it off to Amazon. It's been like months of work to reformat it for Amazon and like get all the kinks worked out. It's been a real pain. I don't have much time, of course, between kids and work. But I hit the submission button, and then twice it was wrong. I had to go back and fix it. But I just got the email. As my sister got here for a surprise visit with my parents, I got the email that my book is republished again, and it just needs to go through their system, and it's going to be live in a couple of days. So I'm really excited about that. I'm proud of that book because it tells about queer history in a way that I didn't know before I started researching about how the queers birthed the medical marijuana movement because it was the only thing that helped in the AIDS crisis with all of the problems that AIDS and HIV cause in the body. And also it's about the war on drugs and a big push against Reagan. So it's great. And so in fact, the nice part is it's free online too. You can go to lexpelger.com right now and see this book. And then the other book that's free online is this one. This is my science book about the discovery of CBN's final structure. Hey Renee! And so this one's also free online, and it's a really great science book. It explains it through elephants. And then I also have the first chapter on my website too, under the Moby Dick Pot Books, and that's because I have the next 7 chapters written out. I just need to illustrate them, so I've got to find a good collage illustrator to work with. Turn off invites for this live. Yeah, other people. Yeah, I don't want to join other people's lives. Great. Yeah, hey Mimi, thanks for making it. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I don't know how long I was frozen for or how much anybody got to see, so thanks for joining me. And yeah, I'm also putting this YouTube, so I'm putting my announcements up front. So the other thing that I'm announcing is I'm starting a Discord. Oh, thank you, Mimi, your favorite account. That's really kind. Thank you so much. I really enjoy it. It's so much fun. I wish I had more time for it, and that's the hope, is to figure out a way to make more time for this. So I'm going to start a Discord because mostly I read this amazing essay from the very, very end of 2022 that just changed me. It was in an essay by Cory Doctorow from Boing Boing, who I like, and it was called The Enshittification of TikTok, about how the platform is moving away from users and creators towards, generating revenue for shareholders, because that's the life cycle of these things. But in that, he talked about a magisterial essay from Catherine Valente, who I didn't know, called Stop Talking to Each Other and Start Buying Things, 3 Decades of Survival in the Deserts of Social Media. And it's amazing. It's a beautiful piece of writing about this person who was there from the very earliest days of the internet in the US, from Prodigy, and met an old grandma in Minnesota who taught them about applying eye shades that are very different colors, like blue and purples. And it's beautiful about the connection. Hey, Ricky! And about how these platforms keep getting destroyed. We lose each other on Twitter, we lose each other on TikTok, Facebook falls apart because of money. And I want to create more communities where we can keep joining each other, because this essay ends with a howl about how we keep finding each other. Like, they keep destroying the platforms and we keep making new ones. And it's terrible, but you have to keep doing it. And at the end, they decide to be the little old lady and say, just keep making our little communities online. And that's what I want, because I do not like how one-sided TikTok it is. It makes it hard for me to read your DMs and get back to you. So Renee, I don't know if I saw that one yet, because I can't archive my DMs, so I have to go through all of them every time. It's a terrible system. So I want to spend this week catching up on DMs, but I also catch up on comments using the platform that I signed up for. But the API of TikTok doesn't have DMs, and so it's a lot harder to like see them, which is terrible. It's what I don't like about TikTok, is that I want to connect with you more, and they want to show videos. They don't want us like talking on there very much. It doesn't work. So Discord, we can talk to each other, and the algorithm doesn't control we talk to each other. If you're on the Discord, you're with us, and we can always talk. You get to see everything, and the algorithm doesn't decide how we get to see each other. So is that why TikTok's changing? Yeah, it's been so different. Yeah, they're always screwing with the algorithm. I mean, they had a good algorithm for like finding new stuff. But it's not even a special algorithm, the TikTok algorithm. I was just reading an analysis, and it's just that it's geared. You can kind of gear them more towards discovery or more towards more of the same. And TikTok just puts more towards discovery, and because of the nature of you skipping the ones you don't like, it's really easy to just like get exposed to a lot of new stuff and don't care until you hit that one where you do care. So it's, it's a fascinating, I've learned so much from this app. Like, it's only been Twitter and TikTok for me the last 2 years for learning. And then that dickhead bought Twitter, and not like I had a platform there particularly, but I learned from a lot of people there, and now I just don't like going anymore. Just like Facebook slowly died, well, Twitter quickly died. And so that's what I like about Discord, is that we can all be here on top of each other, if you will, and listening to each other. I joined Twitchy Witches TikTok live, and I've been loving watching her content, and then all of a sudden I can talk to her friends and the people she's working with about different topics, and it's cool. And that's why I'd like to do a Discord. I'm learning from her about the stuff she focuses on, but my focus is slightly different. So I might just have an entry for the first 10 numbers. How does Discord work? It's like an old school chat. There's like different chat like areas, and then you can add links and just chat away. And so I would probably have just like 10 areas, one for each of the numbers, and each of the numbers has like an idea attached to it where we talk about politics or the oneness or whatever makes sense. So yeah, I love Twitchy Witch too. Discord, it's an app and it's a platform. So you sign on through your PC or you sign on your phone, and it's just like an old school instant messenger almost, except it has a bunch of different people talking and it keeps it all in one place. So it's just a really nice place to share stuff and have your back and forth, and you can reply directly to people. And that's what I'm missing. Like, I'm a geriatric millennial, and so Facebook used to be awesome, and now it's just not. It's just pushed towards ads. They captured the users and they captured the content makers, and now they're just harvesting money for shareholders, and you can feel it, and it stinks. They no longer want to connect us because as this essay said, stop talking to each other and start buying things. That's the beginning of the death knell cycle. So I did not make this Discord yet, but I'd like to this week. I have a busy week with my work stuff, but I think I can make it happen and at least have it there so people can start signing up and get started, because I want a different way to talk, and I'd love to find a way to make this more interactive, because I'm getting so many great ideas from you, but with the content system of TikTok, it's so hard to stay on top of who said what and where I got an idea from without going through sometimes hundreds or thousands of messages to find them that aren't well sorted, and there's no way to sort them. This app is amazing for like the creators going this way and for the users being able to absorb, but it's not as great for community and be able to talk to each other. It'd be great if we could all be talking now, but it doesn't quite work like that. So anyway, that's the announcements. I'll probably at some point talk about the humility card I got from the I Ching, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to shout them out about the wall or what's been up. But yeah, thanks for people joining. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but it's good to see people here already. So, and I will talk about the card here in the beginning. So, I asked the I Ching live on my first ever TikTok where I asked the I Ching something in front of everybody about should I do a live on Sundays and devote more time to content production. And for one, a bunch of smart friends online like, you shouldn't say should. You shouldn't say should, which is funny, even how you say it. As my buddy Zoe said, her parents say, Uncle Buck is, her dad, Uncle Buck, is who I inherited these 66 boxes of books from that are scattered around here, an amazing library. And him and Auntie Jay would say that, should brings in Saturn energy, that it's low, it's depressive energy. And I hear that, but also I like should from people I trust. When my sister or my parents or my wife or somebody says, you should do this, I listen. I don't mind the word should, but I hear that you shouldn't overuse that word either. Anyway, I did say, should I devote my time to this? And I got the hexagram number 15, which is Chien, which can be modesty or can be humility. And it is the Kun, the receptive earth. My old cards are falling out. Over the Ken, who's the mountain, the younger brother. And so it is about catching what's coming from above, but also not growing too big from it, not making yourself out to be too big. The judgment says modesty creates success. The superior man carries things through. So that's a positive. That's saying yes to the answer, but it talks about the superior man not reducing that which is too much and not bringing up that which is too little. And so really putting things in their correct place. Don't call yourself, I just, silly about something when you know it pretty well. But also don't act like you really know this stuff because you read a couple of paragraphs on Wikipedia just to prove a point. And so I got two different changing lines. And the first one was, so it was the very first line at the bottom and the last line. And the last line, the 6 at the top, said, it is favorable to set one's armies marching, to chastise one's own city and one's own country. And it's about putting your ego where it belongs. And in the other edition of the I Ching that I love, the one I mentioned in my first I Ching video by John Minford, is a modern historian / lover of the I Ching's take. It's a wonderful book. And he has a business I Ching expert who he quotes a lot named Professor Moon, and the guy just sounds like a genius. And there's such a long history of applying the I Ching to business. It's basically first for politics, then for business, and then eventually the commentaries turned into a spiritual practice as well. But at first it was a very practical book, this oracle, as it evolved. And this business professor said, putting your ego and your country and your city in the right place might mean not putting yourself down when you know stuff. Being honest about where you're good, too. Because if you've read 5 or 10 books about a subject, you know more about that subject than most people on the planet. And especially 10 books. I remember somebody smart saying that. And, for me, I have a couple topics where I've read more than 10 books on. I'm not a world expert, but at least I've seen it from a bunch of different angles and can see the patterns more that way. And I think it's really important when you know something, whether it be from your head knowledge or your gut just knows this is something that's true, to not put that under a bushel, as we used to sing in our Bible classes. Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Let your light shine. When you really know it, you can let people know about it. And so for me, my humility is, as my father says, I'm just a guy. Lex isn't that smart. He just reads a lot of books. This is one of my father's favorite lines. And he said that and actually after last week's live, he's like, no, I'm going to stop saying that. You're smart. You can put stuff together. But I think he said that same thing 2 years ago. He's like, oh, I'm going to stop saying that. But he keeps saying it because it's a funny line. But it is actually how I see myself. Like this, each of these pieces of paper is basically a book. And I just, took it down to the best notes from it. And so it's a good number of books, but it's not a million. And there's so many areas in this where I just don't. I'm still learning. I just don't know my stuff. And that's why I love all the feedback I'm getting here about here's places to fill in holes in your knowledge. And I think Discord will be even better for that. And so my thing is I keep getting stuff wrong, even about the basics of alchemy. I was saying stuff wrong about the which cards are linked to the earth, water, air, which suits of the tarot. And it's just the thing to do with this stuff is to remember that I'm no expert, and with any of this stuff, what you say in the 12 steps, I think is always applicable. Take what you like and leave the rest. Because I'm in recovery, and I learned a lot in the rooms, as they call them. And you just learn some amazing wisdom from people who otherwise you probably wouldn't be talking to. And then on the flip side, you'd hear some things that don't make sense, probably are actively untrue, or your gut is like, that doesn't feel right. And you can just drop it. It's the nicest part about learning from other people and reading the books. If it's not an idea that really resonates with you, just drop it. You don't have to think about it again. If it's one that really catches, it's what you can write down the note, or incorporate it into your personal cosmology of what you believe about the world. But so much of it, you just let it go. All of these other people were making it up, and you're going to make up your own system. And even what you get wrong, you get completely inverted, is going to be fine. In fact, I'll share something about the I Ching that's pretty funny, and I think speaks to like how much the truth of this really matters. For the first, I don't know how many years I was working with the I Ching, I didn't realize that you built the hexagram from the bottom with each coin throw and went to the top. So I was starting with the top line and then making them going down. So I was doing it exactly opposite every single time. So every reading that I did was the opposite of what it was supposed to be, because I built it in the wrong direction. And I still found it to be an amazing book that kept answering my questions. It kept having great advice about moderation and not overextending yourself and the balance of life and what really matters about life. And so it speaks to the fact that these oracles are mirrors that are just reflecting where you are right now. You probably already know the answer to this question. And if you take the time to sit there and write out a really good question about it, think about it for a while, calm yourself, throw some coins in a meditative practice, read some wise words, your brain's going to see the answer in there anyway. It's why you can use tea leaves for this stuff as well, because in the tea leaves, I'll see the line that says, stop being a dick to your wife. Like, that's what all the oracles tell me. They're always like, be kind to your wife. And that's the main lesson I should be learning. The kids are pretty easy. They're kids, but you can always be kinder to your wife. And it speaks to how it doesn't quite matter what's true. We know what's true deep in our guts. And, all of the mystical, women and queer people that I've met are so often, I don't care if astrology is true. Like, they're connected to something somehow. They might be using this as their system, but it doesn't have to be. I do think it is, but it doesn't have to be at all. It still helps because these wise people are pulling stuff inside themselves and outside themselves somehow to give good answers. And that used to be a really valuable service that provided by the little old lady who lived on the edge of the village, and now we've lost that, and we have to find it through Twitter and TikTok threads of people that we really like. So, yeah. Overall, just to say that it's really good to be humble about this stuff where you don't know, and it's good to be proud about this, to be firm in the stuff that you do know. So anyway, let's see. I got some things here I wanted to respond to. Can it do shame and also love the connection to Saturn energy? Yeah, it should be shame. I know. I got a lot of shame. I'm in recovery, and I'm a writer. It just feels like shame is kind of like the tail that's always like gonna drag along. But it's true. It's what you're supposed to be. They talk about a lot in recovery, that shame is what is going to be feeding the monster more, because you're actually, guilt is that you've done something wrong. Shame is that you are wrong. It's a piece of wisdom I learned from my therapist wife, and it really helps remember, okay, I did something there, it was a dick. I myself am not an asshole. My godmothers, after I said it enough times in front of them, they started yelling at me for calling myself an asshole. You're like, don't put that energy into the universe. Don't let your subconscious hear you saying that. I don't want to hear you say it again. And so I stopped. I'll call myself a dickhead, because that seems like it's about the right amount of depth for the word, but asshole is too much. So it's true that shame versus guilting is really good. It's really important. So how do you integrate Hermeticism in your life? It's a good question, because in some ways I don't quite know. Like, it just is kind of there, and I use it as ideas. But I guess that's not really true. I mean, treating each of these numbers like a different idea helps me to remember the things that matter to me. And the 2 helps me remember that usually both sides are right in any argument, especially within science. And the 10 helps to remember all the balance of the tree of life and how you're looking for that balance in your own life. And you also, for me, I just make stuff up. I don't make it up, but I find it, I'm like, this one I'm gonna make a next level kind of belief. And I was just thinking about this one tonight because I'm looking at something I have on my wall over here. I have, my whole life, the only god I would have from the Hindu pantheon was Ganesha, an early connection to Ganesha because he was the god of travelers, the elephant-headed god, and has a lot of great wisdom and mystery around him. And so I've had him here for years. I used to have a statue of him with me when I traveled, and now there's a nice statue of him here. And this random Chaos International magazine, who knows where I got it, but I was just going through it and I kind of did some bibliomancy and I opened up and it was talking about Ganesha and talking about the 7 demons that Ganesha is trying to slay and to get out of your way. The demons that get in the way of you fulfilling your own intentions. And so I looked at that list and it was, I can't quite pull these down, but the list is lust, unjust anger, greed, infatuation, jealousy, attachment, and egoistic pride. And those are things that I experience that get in my way. And I'm like, that's the list. And even though, it's just from some random chaos magic journal, and I think it's true, I'm putting it down because it feels so true. And now, at the end of the day, I look at that list and I'm like, do I need to put a red mark next to one of these things because I did that and that made me more short with my wife or, not as sharp for the day, or unkind to somebody for some reason. And it's really nice now to get to the end of the day and not have to check that. I had to check attachment today for sure because I got attached to how I wanted something to be and I got pissy about it. And so for me, I'm building these things in my head that just are memory palaces that help me remember, what really matters to me. And so in that sense, it's very important to me. In another sense, it just feels like I'm playing with all these cards and moving around because it's a really nice hobby and it keeps me out of trouble. It's like Robert Heinlein said about religion is that religion is like dandruff. It gives somebody something to fiddle with. And this gives me something to fiddle with. I think it helps make me better day to day, but even if it doesn't, at least it's a good way to pass the time and it feels like I'm doing something. This is related to human design, right? Yes, but I don't know as much about human design. My wife does, but it seems like a pretty amazing system in terms of all the different things that it maps on top of itself. It stopped scrolling forward, so there we go. Clearly opposites, traded stupid for bimbo or silly. That's good. I'm not stupid. I'm silly. I was silly to throw my car keys there and lose them down the drain. That's good. I like that. I like that a lot. And Deb, what is Hermeticism? So Hermeticism is, for some reason, it's a thing that I blew up on TikTok, and all of a sudden I have a bunch of people I can talk to. So to me, it's been great for that. Hermeticism is from the Hermetica. This is the person to learn about this text from is this one. So I have a video about this that kind of kicked off this whole thing. This is Dame Frances Yates. That's the knight version for women. So she was an amazing scholar of the Renaissance and magic and occult and science and how all those played together. And she's here talking about Giordano Bruno, who they burned at the stake. Not for thinking that the earth went around the sun. They burned Bruno at the stake because he was trying to convert the Pope to Egyptian magic, like what he thought was the Hermetica, and was doing a pretty good job of it. The Pope was considering incorporating Egyptian magic, and finally other church fathers were like, no, this guy has to go, and they burned him to death. And he was just this amazing hero with amazing writings. And so what she writes about a lot is how, here, let me make sure that this is, okay, sorry, I've been checking with my sister's giving me advice too, because this is only my second time doing this, so I got technical stuff to check out. And so this is the Hermetica that got rediscovered at the beginning of the Renaissance. And when they started reading it and it first got translated, it was an explosion. It was a time of discovering great old books from the Greeks and Romans and other past places, and that it changed in society. Aristotle was lost in Europe and then was rediscovered and changed everything. This book changed everything in a huge way because it was about magic, really, and creating magic within your own mind. And when they found this, they thought that this was an ancient text. They thought this was from Egypt, was older than Moses, was an original piece of wisdom from the very beginning, by a guy named Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes thrice wise. But it turns out it wasn't that. It was not that old. It was probably from like 1st or 2nd century Greek people who wrote this. And even though the Renaissance people had the tools of detective work with old texts, it's called philology, they could have put it together and figured out that this couldn't have been that old a book, but they just didn't for a long time. And then eventually, near the end of the Renaissance, I think, or whenever that happened, they realized, no, this is actually quite a new book. But for all the Renaissance, they thought this was the ancient wisdom from Egypt, and it was a lot about, the main idea that you always hear is, as above, so below. And I see that in science. I look at how the galaxies spin, and then I look at how our biosphere works, and then you look at one ecosystem and the web of relation between them, and then you look at one organism and how the organs work together, and then you look at one cell, and one cell is exactly like a city. And it just keeps going down, that all these levels of existence look similar to each other. There's similar patterns about feedback loop and how much balance there is. And their great breakthrough in wisdom was that's all of inside you as well. You know, working with your therapist, working with your shaman, or working with the old wisdom people in your life, you dive in and you find what's true. And like so many of these mystic traditions say, it turns out the truth is you have that piece of gold deep, deep inside you that is the oneness. That we are all just little chips off the great oneness. And so, you know, thou art God, as Michael Valentine Smith said in Stranger in a Strange Land. And, you know, and as Jesus hinted in some of his works, as some of his sayings as well. I'm looking for one right here from him. That's not quite the right thing. Oh yeah, so Jesus in John 10:34 said, Jesus answered them, "It is not written in your law. Is it not written in your law, quote, I said ye are gods." So Jesus said that because he was quoting Psalms 82:6, which says, "You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you." So David, king of Israel, is saying, you are all gods. You are pieces of God, and your job. And a modern scientific take is that we are the neurons and eyeballs of God, so God can look back at themselves and see themselves. And part of our job here is to keep becoming more gold-like, and getting closer and closer to that, which at first means just getting rid of the bullshit. Go to therapy, stop being so self-centered and awful, and make it more about other people than yourself, and do a bunch of work. And if you become a guru, be a guru who doesn't have clay feet and hurts the people around them through sex and drinking. And it's actually funny that this came up now because I did draw a card from the Alchemical deck by Robert Place, which if you've been following me, you know is my Christmas gift that has just been a wonderful, blowing me away. It's one of the best tarot decks I've ever seen. And this is the one I got today. It is the 7 of Discs. And so this is the alchemical process, basically. This is the base metals at the bottom. This is called the obelisk. And each of those coins is at a higher level of the metal. So you have lead, iron, tin, copper, mercury, silver, and then gold. And so when people talk about alchemy, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to work through themselves to where you just get the gold. And so Hermeticism helped to spark alchemy. Hermeticism was at the very beginning. It was kind of the philosophy of what led to alchemy. And remembering that alchemy isn't what we think about where it's, you know, it's a bunch of mountebanks and scammers trying to turn lead into gold. There was a ton of that. But pretty early on in alchemy, people realized that alchemy is about studying yourself, and that it can be a spiritual practice where you keep looking for the prime material, trying to transform, and it turns out that the prime material is you, and that is that's the thing you're trying to transform, and the And it's really beautiful that way, that it wasn't just about the science of it, it was a spiritual practice that led to science, because they kept trying to learn more about these materials, and that examination process led to the empirical process of science and repeatability. But it always had a spiritual side to it, and science sometimes gets farther and closer to its scientific to its spiritual side. But the quantum mechanics revolution, all of the founding people of that, almost all of the founding people of the quantum revolution, realized there was a deep philosophical and they would say spiritual bent to what this means about the interconnectivity of all of us, that nothing happens unless it gets observed by something else. Niels Bohr put a yin and yang symbol on his family crest before anybody in the West knew what a yin and yang was, pretty much anybody. So that's what Hermeticism is to me. It's studying yourself and studying the world outside of yourself and seeing how they are not only similar, but exactly the same. As the poet Pessoa said, my soul is just a little bit bigger than the entire universe, which I think is a really great way of getting to it. Okay, and the 1 second, I just want to take care of my sister said I shouldn't turn off invites for lives because my followers won't get a notification. So I might have just screwed up. But let me just look at this and see see if I can do anything right now. Just if I should do anything. So yeah, thanks for the pause. Just figuring out my technical side here. If you were following from the beginning, you realize that I tried to do this on my little computer and it didn't work. It just completely screwed it up, and froze the computer. So okay, but I don't think there's much else I can do here. So okay, cool. Okay, TikTok, you just got an invite. Okay, cool. Yeah, so maybe it's all fine. Okay, Hermes, the Emerald Tablet guy. Yes, the Emerald Tablet. You can look up the Emerald Tablet, and it just is a very simple way to break it down. But it's simple and it's seductively simple. It's like understanding what the black and white mean, or some of the really basic opposites. And so that's what's cool about Hermeticism is that it's a way that you can have an excuse to study the entire universe. Then it makes sense to be studying the history and science and the history of science and philosophy and whatever it is that turns your brain on. Once you study 3 or 4 of those a bunch, they're gonna see all these correlations between them that probably not many people have ever seen before, and maybe no one else has ever written or shared about before. And so it's what I want to see more and more of is more people just having videos about this kind of stuff from their own area of expertise. And just to say, if you're someone who's never made a video, you should jump in and just do it about something. I know my wife is a little nervous to get started. She's been doing great on Instagram for talking about therapy in French, but she's a little bit nervous. TikTok's just a whole other ballgame. But the cool part about TikTok is, in the beginning, nobody sees your stuff except people who are really nice. It's until the algorithm gets to know you, and even for me, I've blown up once, like 500,000 people saw one video, and now I have 25,000 followers instead of 1,300, and I've gotten 5 or 6 nasty messages that I didn't appreciate but weren't terrible, and 1 or 2 at me bros about atheism or converting me to Christianity or something. But overall, that's pretty good. Also, that being said, I know it's so much easier for someone presenting as a male, white male. It's just, Claire has a friend who blew up for singing songs about therapy, and it's just so much worse. It's so unfair how it happens. But that being said, when you get started on this platform and you share your stuff, it's just really nice people who respond to it. It's other people who, it doesn't serve enough people to get any nastiness out of people. You don't get served to the wrong sides. And my only advice is blocky block. If anyone you don't like their vibe, this is your space. block them. You know, don't think about their comment. Don't get into the mud and wrestle with a pig. Just block them, because the more you talk on here, the more you'll find the others. And you don't have to be seen by a ton of people for it to really matter. You change one person's life, you get to, and you connect with them. You know, they might send a message about something, and it's really nice that way. So, opinion on the principle of gender. Okay, cool. Oh, hello from Spain. Cool. Gender. Yeah, thank you, because I've been wanting to talk about gender, because it's one of the main things in the Kybalion, that book from a century ago, that's a great, like, modern take on Hermeticism, which I'd recommend as a starter to anybody. But also as a scientist, gender is so fascinating, and I know I use the words male and female a lot, maybe too much, but let me be very clear on how much I think all of these genders are true, and it's so cool. It's the coolest part about life. I believe that there is like a platonic male and a platonic female. There's something to that, because it evolves so many times in the history of life on this planet. You know, scientists often talk about how the eyeballs evolved 7 times, so it must be important to see. Well, genders have evolved many more times than that. Whenever there is something that is mono and doesn't have a gender, pretty quickly, usually, it develops that. And why? Why is it so important to life? It must, I mean, a guess is it's something with the mixing. Like you have these genes, you mix them, and you have to do the mixing. If you don't have the mixing, you don't have the flexibility to respond to the changes that will be happening in the environment. And so it's the mixing that's so important. And the thing about gender in the animal kingdom is it's so much more complex than even in the human kingdom. And it's so, it's so complex for us. That's why I love the open love scene in New York. It was so queer positive, and there were just a whole bunch of fascinating queer people. And just like Joseph Campbell said that there are as many paths to the one as there are people, there are many paths to gender as there are people. And there are so many species that have like 5 or 6 genders, or there's a great species of octopus where there's a male and a female, but there's also a male who looks like a female because his mating strategy is looking like a female, hanging out in the harem with the other females, and then just like slipping some of his sperm into a female when the big male's not looking. So it works. It's a great way to pass on your genes, and there's a balance there. Bacteria and viruses would differ. Okay, but bacteria and viruses share. They're sending DNA plasmids back and forth to each other. They talk more than we do. I can't actually send my DNA into my father, though it's worth a shot. But bacteria are constantly sending DNA darts back to each other about resistance and stuff like that. I'm not sure if you might get me with viruses, but I'm also not an expert in viruses. And so, good, and just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So yeah, gender's great. Like, the rainbow of what we think we know as humans, and it's so much bigger than that for humans, and it's so much bigger than that in the animal world. And so it's beautiful. It's one of the things that makes life worth living, is like all of the sexual selection. I mean, that's what Darwin said. To paraphrase him, is if there's some crazy thing in the animal kingdom, like a tail that's way too long, or horns that are way too big, or something weird in the behavior or the life cycle, it's almost certainly because of gender and sexual selection. If it like helps you live longer and eat better, that's like typical evolution. But with gender, like who you screw matters so much that we can build a giant tail on a peacock that would like most certainly get you more caught by a leopard, but it gets you laid more, a lot more, enough to matter more than the leopard catching thing. And it explains so much about our society, and billionaireism and all of this. So gender is just fascinating and beautiful in all of its complexity. So anyway, Joseph Campbell's take on the cultures, mythology relating to one another. Yeah, it's funny because in one sense, all these myths line up so well, and in the other sense they don't, and they shouldn't be. And I've seen some really smart pushback being like they shouldn't be treated, like some things just never line up and are unique to certain mythologies. And as I read a lot more I read a lot of mythology in my life, and now I'm reading a lot to my kid. And it's good to remember how unique certain ones are and how there's always universal aspects to them too. That's why I just, if I had a clone, he would be reading all of Joseph Campbell right now. You know, I've read a couple of Campbell books, but he's just one that's he's so heart-centered, I think, in his work, which is really important. My work with extraterrestrials most are neither male nor female. Yeah, I think we evolved beyond the male-female thing. Certainly by the time you get to like high deities. The TikTok professor, that's a good name. That's a really good name. Thank you. What did I have for my other ideas? Okay, my one idea was mysticism or us. It's Shinsi, I know. It should be hermeticism or us. But the one that's actually close to my heart, what I did, if you saw my last video about my buddy Neil and him passing and me finding his book, and just as I found out I was going to be a father for the first time ever, and there being a beautiful line in there about parenting, then you know about the book tour that I was on for my queer book that I republished this week. Don't buy it on Amazon this minute. Wait a couple days for it to get updated, but you can see it for free on lexpelger.com right now. My queer book and the elephant book on the chemistry of cannabinoids. This is on the war on drugs and cannabis and the heroic queers of San Francisco during the AIDS crisis. It's kind of based on Angels in America and Moby Dick. Anyway, I was out promoting those books on the road, and I was doing an open mic psychoactive storytelling tour. So people mostly talked about psychedelics, but all I would do is put a microphone in the middle in some bar or wherever, like art school, that we would rent, and just invite the local community. Wherever there was a host, we would just put the mic down, and it was, I've spent most of my life hosting events and like going to events, not parties, I've never really went to parties, but like good, like cool events where people get to mix and talk. I don't like places where you can't really hear people to talk. And these open mics were the most powerful thing probably to ever happen to me in my life. And as a drug writer who's been researching drugs for 15, 20 years now, I learned more from people's stories than I did from all those books and all that peer-reviewed research, because it was just all over the place. And one fascinating thing, talking about boys versus girls and, the in-between, in the beginning it would usually be guys who would come, and they were here to tell a story that you could tell they've told a bunch of times before, and it's like big and kind of wild and, sometimes very touching, and not always, like, sometimes bad things happen to them, but like, they came to tell a story. But everyone was really supportive and listened to them. And then the flow would get into the people who had never shared their stories before, like quiet people, or something really terrible happened to them in the psychedelics and they never could tell anyone or barely anyone, and they got up because everybody was so kind and supportive of each other. They would get up and finally tell the story for the first time, and it would be so cathartic, and other people would learn from it, and it would always just end on the most perfect story. It was beautiful. And I'm like, this is a church. I put it together. I grew up in a church. It was conservative, but also but not political. Just a bunch of nice, like mostly nice farm people who I really liked and was glad I could play with every weekend. And my parents liked talking to. And it was community, and I got to see what was good about small religious communities. Then I went to India, and I saw the Hindus that we lived with do the same thing, and the Sikhs, and we have religion probably mostly, so we get together on that one day and we hang out and we know each other's kids and we gossip and we fight about theology or interpersonal stuff, and it gives you something to do, because otherwise we're trapped within these tiny nuclear families in these little cubicle style lives. And so I'm like, this is church, because we all get to come together. Us psychoactive people who share this thing that we don't always get to talk about, we got to come and talk about it. And it was beautiful. And I didn't have to do anything. I talked about humility earlier. Like, it wasn't me. I'm a good host because I can keep things moving. But I would always take people in the order that they came to me, and that would be the order of the show. I didn't change anything. And the stories are beautiful. You can listen to them, by the way. They're on lexpelger.com. They're on the Psychedelic Salon 2.0, which I was sharing them there. The oldest podcast. My buddy Lorenzo was very kind to host them, and you can also see them on my site. Those storytelling sessions were just beautiful. And so I came up with the idea of the Church of Why Not. And then up in Canada, I found a book about how to grow a church. And by two really nice people were like, if this is the most important thing, if church is the most important thing, like if this saves you people, then you need to do a good job of it. And it was just a really practical look at how to grow a church. I'm like, I would love to grow a church, like a church of us. And that's what I want to do online, but we all come together. You don't really need one preacher. We can all just take turns talking. That's what I learned from 12-Step is let everybody share. Everybody has something good to share. You cut them off after 7 minutes or 2 minutes, and you set the timer ahead of time, but you learn from everybody. And even if there's someone who always comes up and says the same stuff, well, you learn from that. That's why we're here together. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share about the other name that this could be. That's what brought this up. I could call this the Church of Why Not, because I like that. Maybe it's a little too cheeky, but the Church of Why Not has a good ring to it. Okay, let me catch up here. Do I rock with Deleuze? No. Deleuze sounds great. So he's a Frenchman from like 100-ish years ago who sounded like a great writer on the occult. A couple people brought him up to me since my video got big, but I haven't read him myself. And I'm here in France, so that is someone I'd like to get to. Clean the apartment listening. Thank you. Church of Why Not sounds dope. Cool. Great. Good. And good. Check it all out. Okay, cool. So that's the Church of Why Not part. And let me know if you have any questions about stuff I've been talking about on my videos these last couple days. Because I had a good friend who, after that first video got big, a guy I met on here I really like, said, hey, remember, don't chase the views. Just because it was a Hermetic video that got you big, don't just do that. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, that's a really good warning, because it's way too easy to just do this stuff and be like, oh, can I pivot in this direction? How does it? I need to remember, I started this to just make videos about books for my kids, in case I wasn't here for them because of a bus, or, knocking me out of here. I just want them to see that. I don't want to lose that fun, because it won't be as good for you, it won't be as good for me. And so I want to keep to the stuff that got me here in the first place, like the history wall that I have in the basement that I do videos about, even though, sure, not everybody loves it, but I get a kick out of it. And my science-mancy of just the articles I like from Nature, so I'm just glad that people are interested in this Hermetic stuff, but it's not like I'm, an expert. I think the plan is I'll teach 10 classes on the 10 numbers, because I can do an hour on each of the numbers. I have that much in me. But this is a good challenge for me to keep going and to keep moving forward to learn. And so that's why this whole platform is a good challenge for me. It's about staying humble, remembering what I know, but also being happy with the stuff I can share that I really care about and I've worked hard to learn, and to find other people who have worked hard to learn their stuff and learn from them, because we're just here to learn and to keep doing it over and over again. Starting to believe in as a scientist, starting to believe in reincarnation helped me a lot, to just not worry so much. Chill, man. What hand do I write with? That's a good question. I'm right-handed. I've always been right-handed. I have practiced stuff with my left hand just to I have some years of notes in lefty just to practice that, but I'm not sure how much that helped me. Hi, how do you ask the I Ching questions? I have it, I'm intimidated by it. That's a great question, because it is a really intimidating book. And, one thing that's intimidating is making sure that you're getting it right about how to be reading it. And throwing the coins, what do those coins mean? How to build the hexagram from the bottom. And one thing I might say is you don't need to do it that way. I mean, the old way was yarrow stalks. You had 50-something yarrow stalks and you'd throw them, you have to count them every time. So it was a long meditative practice. My friend Fred Hatt, who I interviewed on the Lex Files podcast, he does it by yarrow stalk. And he's just a really beautiful reader of the I Ching. I get a lot out of the couple of sessions I've had with him. And there's something nice about that slow method. For me, there's something nice about the coins and actually working with them. But the Oracle just works too. There are apps on for any platform. There's a really good Android app that I could even look up. Oh no, it's on this one. That you can just use the phone to shake it and have it give you up a hexagram. And then look online at the couple of major translations of it. Most of the old classic I Ching translations are free online, and you can just look at a couple of them. And the real answer is, it's all about formulating the question. And it can be very simple, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be yes, no. It can be open-ended. The easiest question is, for this thing in my life, what should I be paying attention to? That's a great, good, open-answered question. But it helps to sit there for 10 minutes and think about it and make some different versions of that question. What do you actually want to know there? What's actually, what matters here to you? You figure out what matters to you, and the more you figure that out, the more the oracle is going to show you the mirror of what you probably already know. That's the nice thing about the I Ching. Its answer is usually balance and moderation. Sometimes it says yes to this project, sometimes it says no to this project, but like I said in the beginning, for people who aren't here, for the first couple of years, I think I read the I Ching completely upside down. I built it from the top instead of the bottom, and so I had an inverted hexagram every time. So I was reading the wrong entry every single time, and still I found it amazingly helpful. So there is that. It's going to be helpful because it's just a book of wise sayings and good wisdom. I also think there's a real It's been too many experiences where it feels like there's a real spirit there, as well with the tarot. The ways where it's just like an old friend laughing at you, like an old godmother or godfather being like, yeah, you know this one. You've seen this card before. You know what this one means. You've seen this hexagram before. This is saying something that you've heard and you know. It's just like sometimes you go to ayahuasca and she's like, you know your message here. Like, you don't need to come back here and take this again. You know what you should have been working on and you haven't done it yet. Yeah, the most important part is asking a good question. And then for me, I just I have it on an index card or a piece of paper, and then I read through the couple different translations and I just write out the good ideas. Some of it doesn't make sense because I don't know about this esoteric, like, old stuff they're talking about, or it's referring to something I don't know. Like, I get that all the time. And sometimes I'm like, I want to track that down and look up what that means. Other times like, I don't care. I don't know what, like, this type of mancy, it doesn't relate to me. I've never heard of it, or I've never cared about it. I'm not going to look it up now. And that's pretty much what all of these notes are back here. It's just the best of from each of these books. And so you go through a couple different translations of your answer, and you'll find enough good sentences where I think the answer will be right there, and you'll see it. Because I think most of the time your subconscious already knows the answer, and the I Ching is the mirror, or the tarot is the mirror to help you see it. The tarot is a little bit more mysterious if you don't know it well, because they represent different things. You kind of have to work with a while to get the energies and essences that they're talking about there. The I Ching is words, and the nice part is we're just so word-oriented, these last centuries, that it's just so available to all of us. The I Ching is very intimidating, but it doesn't have to be, because in the beginning, it's going to be very forgiving, and that's the most important part, is that if you don't quite feel like you're doing it right, it's okay. Like, the Oracle understands that you're trying and you're learning and you're coming at it with respect, but you don't quite know what you're doing, and you can ask a lot of stuff, and it doesn't have to be super important stuff. You can just start playing with it, like, this thing today, I don't quite know what to do with my day. Like, whenever you're at a crossroads, you can ask it. And eventually, once you ask enough times, you'll start to guess what the answer is going to be. But you have to ask a lot of times first, and that's how you get started. You just start asking. So yeah, good luck. And if you want to talk about it, I'm now doing readings for people, but I'm also happy if you leave a comment. I can respond about the I Ching as well and make videos about it. What else? Yeah. Oh, you started your own wall, Third Eye Roses? That's cool. Great. I'd love to see it. 1,000 Plateaus is a good start. Abstract visual philosophy, Stoic logic, and metaphysics. Oh, that's cool. Mimi, yeah, there's a history wall in the basement. It's like 30 or 40 pieces of paper, one for each century, going back to the beginning of time, or one for each decade after 1700. So technically kind of for my kids, but really I know it's for me. I use a Timelines of History book to fill in like the basics, and then from all my books, every book I read, I put in T's as my symbol. For things I need to enter on the timeline. So it's fun. It's a nice random assortment just from whatever I've read. I also have a digital version too that I think I would share on the Discord. Like, I have digital versions of the history of the world, which is mostly just like good essays I read about different stuff. So is everything just a triangle? Yeah, probably. Everything is probably just a triangle. Like, to me, it's probably the thing we can relate to as humans the most is the things that fall under the number 3, like triangles. I'll share one that I haven't shared at all online yet, because it's not like it comes from like an old master. It's a new master. This is on. Wait, give me 1 second. I'm like on a name here. Oh, I can't get in. Isn't that funny? There it is. Okay. Yeah. So this comes from Bruce Damer. And this is a triangle. He is this beautiful scientist who came up with a new theory about the origin of life. That kind of goes back to Darwin, about hot pools at the edge of an ocean being where life started. And he got this in a non-psychoactive lucid dream while he was flying, because he did what I think like the muse of science and the arts needs. He spent 20 years studying the origin of life and just so he could picture all the parts of what life would need in his head, and then he just closed his eyes on a long flight and pictured all of it, and pictured this schematic of the waves washing over these pools and it eventually starting life. And it's becoming a theory that's really starting to move the field. And he's also this great guy who's like at Burning Man, has a cool podcast, is like a very connected, mystical guy who's also a respected scientist who does stuff for NASA and things like that, and has a very closely connected to the history of the computer and the early computers. He has a great collection in his barn even of that. So anyway, that's Bruce Dameron. He's an amazing guy. And this is what he has for a triangle. He calls it the field, and it's what we make existence out of, is this pattern gnome. And you have the probability of something happening, you have the interconnectedness between all of those pieces, and then you have the memory that you need to remember what happened. And this is what we're always moving between. This is the patterns that we use in our thinking, is we look at what's connected, we look at what can happen, and we remember what's happened before. And so this is a triangle from a modern master. He just happened to tell me one day when we were hanging out, and now it goes on the wall as one of my great triangles. You know, you just there's so many great places to find wisdom, and you know, it's usually old people. He's not that old. He feels young. We'll say that. Do you know of any audio resources? I have ADHD and reading is kind of difficult. Yes, I find some amazing stuff on LibriVox. You can get the app of LibriVox, and it is it's a free audiobook platform where people share. They upload for it's a bunch of volunteers, and they upload audiobooks that they care about. And there's some great stuff on mysticism and occult and hermeticism on there. I would recommend starting with Kybalion. If you haven't read that, I believe I listened to it before that was when I was doing more driving back in Colorado. And so I think I listened to it before I ever read it. And it's such a great way to get stuff into your head. Anyone who thinks an audiobook isn't a book is just crazy to me. So many great books I got into my head for audiobooks. For instance, for Moby Dick, Moby Dick is my favorite book. My cannabis graphic novels are based on Moby Dick. That's why there's going to be 135 of them, hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years. I'll get it all finished and start on my Supernormal book series after that. But Moby Dick, I read it twice right away, like back to back. I read it, I got home, and then read it again to like make it the skeleton for my book. And loved it. I obviously loved it. Then I listened to it. It was an audiobook version by a guy named Frank Miller, who was the great audiobook reader of his generation, like the 80s and 90s. And he was a Shakespearean actor. He loved Moby Dick privately anyway, and then he got to do this really well done version of it. And so it's a Shakespearean actor who's just bringing out how funny Moby Dick is, how scatological, how much of it, how many different voices it has in it, and how much it's based on Shakespeare and the Bible. Those were the two main sources Melville was using, and Shakespeare was, very much used the Bible as well. So he was a Shakespearean actor pulling this Shakespeare out of Moby Dick and just delivering it perfectly. I understood so much more about what the book was doing because I listened to it by someone who really knew it inside and out. It's a cool thing about Moby Dick too, is that it seems like every generation somebody great in their field tackles it. So this is Rockwell Kent. He was the great illustrator of the 20s and 30s. Like every great book, all the great classics, he was given the job of illustrating with these line print style illustrations because he was amazing. He sold books, he was a good investment. So he loved Moby Dick especially. He took 5 years to work on Moby Dick, which is a lot longer than his projects normally took. And this is such a deep take on what the book actually is. It's magnificent. There's lots of illustrations of Moby Dick, but this guy really dove in and got the essence of it. And so I think for all of this stuff, there's great audio and visual ways to get into your system. You don't have to like reading either. You can print these charts out and just look at the charts. And if your brain makes random connections get lost in it, I think that's part of the study. Like so much of this stuff I do not have memorized at all. But you know, I go to the basement as we say in my house, and which opens up my head to more connections. And I come up here and I just look at stuff. And like my head gets caught by something, my eye gets caught by something, and I just kind of put stuff together like, oh yeah, so that balances that, and then it makes me look up something on the internet, and then maybe that makes me write something else up that I just learned. But you know, memory comes from just working stuff over and over again. So for me, this is just a way to like look at the best notes from my from you know, the most important stuff that I've read. I'm actually going to make a video about how I take notes in books. I mean, I could go over a little bit tonight too, but I think making notes really helps the head to remember. Sorry, getting a little behind in the comments. Love a number series. Yeah, so the number series, I'm working on it. So I've done 5 and 7 now. And I have plans to do the rest over the next couple weeks. I don't want to just do the numbers because they're hard actually. You know, they take more time than books that I know inside and out already. Yeah, I think that's the idea, to do a class on those and to do free videos of those as well and all that. Sacred geometry thoughts. I don't really know sacred geometry very well, but a lot of smart people I do like are really into it or respect it or think about it, and I think numbers are one base of the universe. Well, the numbers are also geometrical shapes. Each of those first numbers are there are different shapes. The one is the the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the icosahedron, and then finally the cube for 4. I think there's so many basic level patterns that repeat that it's true. Is time linear? I don't think so. I don't think if you study anything about the UFO stuff, or even the history of folklore from which the UFO stuff actually flows from, and especially if you get into the abduction contact literature, no, there's something about time where beings at levels above us can drop in and out, just like the classic thing you see about Flatland, the Edwin Abbott idea, where if you're on a 2-dimensional shape, if you live in a 2-dimensional field, it's impossible for you to imagine a fork coming through and those 3 tines piercing your reality in 3 different places, but they're related, these 3 different tines. It's something like that, and I know the best book to read about it is Beyond Physicalism. It's a big fat textbook of essays that came out a year or 2 ago, and it talks about the various leading scientists talking about what might be happening with time and dimensions, that explains all of this paranormal, supernormal phenomena that happens. So, are there still oracles at Delphi? I don't know about that. I do know that the oracles at Delphi may be related to psychoactives, that either there was a vapor coming up from them, or that that they were taking something. But also, I don't think you need any of that stuff either. Let me pull up my sister's thing again. I don't think you need any kind of psychoactive experience for those oracle women to have been connected. So many times in Greek history, it seems like the message that got back to an oracle could have been a really smart grandma being like, "You're gonna go to war with them over this? No, you don't, or this. Here's some kind of answer to confuse you or to say no." And I think that's really important. In the Ifa tradition of Africa, there's a really great balance between the male and the female energy, and a space for the genders in between. But the king is the one who does the action, but he's not allowed to do the action until the circle of elderly women, the Congress of women, you might call them, puts the crown on his head. So if he wants to go to war and the women do not want, the old women, who I think should actually be running society for the most part, don't want him to go to war, they don't put the crown on his head, and he doesn't get to go. He wants to be a hothead, he's not allowed to until they sign off on it. And when you talk about balance, there's a better balance there than what we're doing now. We need, as my godfather said, the worst part about what's going on in the world today is the masculine energy having all of this power and it not being balanced by the feminine and the queerness that, diffuses it back to connection. You need both for sure, but there's way too much of this masculine. Speaking of I Ching, what is it likely of two best friends getting the exact same draw? Not great. I don't know. I can't do probabilities off the top of my head, but when I was 64 out of 1 of 64, that is not likely for you to get the same draw at the same time. That's really cool. Amen. I'm curious to hear what would happen about that. Feel free to DM me. I'd love to hear that. Or share it here. It's the funniest part about the I Ching is sometimes it's just like, here, like it just winks at you. I know I did these books with my illustrator Sumac, who is from Peru, and not only a really gifted artist, but also, a mystic, a tarot card reader, like just really wise woman. And she's a mama now, which is cool too. We both started doing the kid thing around the same time, kind of unexpectedly for both of us, but it's great. It gives you something to do. Gives you a sense of purpose. And as Lewis Carroll said, a wise fish never goes anywhere without his porpoise. And so she and I, Sumac and I used the tarot cards a lot as we were putting these books together. And the I Ching and the tarot really underlie, how they came together and their structure, and will more in the future. But with her, it was the first time I ever did it with anyone else. When I used the I Ching with myself, so often I got the sense of being watched and someone being right there. And with the tarot, it was the first time I ever got to do it with somebody else, because we would do these readings. We'd usually draw a card in the morning, or if we got to a stuck place in the book and we didn't quite know which direction to do or what to do with the art or something, we'd draw a card or cards, and sometimes it was just such like a chuckle, such a gotcha, such a laugh. It's like, oh, she got us. Like, not all these cards are positive. And you would get this, like, finger wag sometimes, or this, like, a joke. Like, it just so clearly feels like there's someone there. And as I've said before, and as I want to make a video to this atheist who responded to my one big video, like, oh, you're not being factual here. I don't care about the truth. Like, I care if this makes you a better person. If you're kinder to the people around you, go for it. If your atheism makes you kind to the people around you, great. If it just makes you an annoying pedantic who puts people down, fuck off. Like, I don't care. I don't want to hear that. So, for me, the truth of it was, her and I saw something in that experience that was so meaningful and so funny, and is a shared bond that I'll never forget for the rest of my life, how special it was to have that happen with her. And if it was all just chance and cards just lay that way, I don't really mind. It was beautiful. It seems so clear to be something, and even if it wasn't, we made the meaning out of it. So either way, the truth of it was in that experience and sharing it with someone else. So yeah, the likelihood of you two getting the same hexagram is really crazy. Was it the same changing lines too? I'd love to know. Gone to a psychic, they usually say you have all the answers, you need to trust yourself. Yeah, amen. It's so true. I think psychics also often work very well with people who themselves have some underlying or connection to this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I've had some really, I haven't seen a ton of psychics in my life, but it's so often like, oh, here's a wise woman who's giving me good advice anyway, but is also saying stuff that logically I'm like, it's hard to imagine this being guesses. And like, can I prove it to a board who doesn't believe it? No, but I don't care about them. Like there are so many rationalist materialists who are not looking at the science of the data. Like oh, ESP doesn't exist. I'm like, look at William James. Look at evidence you can look at only evidence that's 100 years old and none of the modern stuff, and have more than enough to convince people, let alone all the data that's been gathered since about things like reincarnation, ESP, UFOs. It's frustrating to be like, oh, there couldn't be any entities, and it's like the DMT is all from stuff in your head. It's like, if you look at the history of folklore, I would not be so presumptuous to say all of these creatures are just inside my head. It seems quite big for your britches with how gigantic the universe is. So anyway, yeah, thanks for that comment. Well, you know Parnassus. Parnassus, I can't think of what that means. The only thing Parnassus I can think of is from that book, The Magus by John Fowles. Wasn't that on the island of Parnassus? That was an amazing book. I have a video about that. The Magus, I do not know how to say it. It's what I want to be when I turn 44, but I don't actually know how to say it. Magus, something like that. All of you readers out there know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't pronounce words because you never say them out loud. So anyway, appreciate the all in the videos. Thanks so much. Using the app for I Ching. Yeah, I said it earlier. Apps for I Ching, absolutely. Like that's a great way to get started. The Android platform has a really beautiful one. I can't look up the name because this is on my phone. When you're getting started, the Oracle's really forgiving. And it's forgiving later on too. You screw up. But like the answers are there. You can just start getting a feel for the I Ching, getting used to it. Feel free to use an app. It's nice to have a book. It's nice to use coins. Kind of helps you concentrate a little bit more. You don't want to be flippant about it, but I don't think anyone here is going to be flippant about it. But I think you can use it a lot, especially when you're just getting to know it. To get to know something, you have to read a whole bunch of it, and so you just do a bunch of draws and see like what a lot of the book. You don't read through the I Ching like a book. I mean, you do once you know it. I just did with my Minford edition because I really wanted to see everything he had to say because he slipped in so many pieces of history that are juicy and great. But I can't wait until I happen to get that hexagram. But it's not a book to be read straight through. It's a book to be like picked at and in a reflective mind frame. And that's the cool part of this, like 64 chapters of wisdom. You keep getting one chapter to read, and then usually a follow-up chapter if you have changing lines. That's the changing lines give the completed hexagram, like if you follow through what it's going to be. Oh, Luna sent a rose. Thanks. Hey, Luna. Thanks for all the great comments, Luna. It's been great. To all the wise stuff you've been saying. And yeah, roses are much appreciated. I don't quite know what they mean, but it's a rose. Pin a nose on my rose. Pin a rose on my nose. So yeah, I think the apps are great. And if you want to buy a book, just if you want to go for something really simple, the first book to have in your hand would probably be the Wilhelm book, translated by Baines into English. It's like the classic that most of the West used for like the 60s and 70s. I think is the. And so it's just a good, straightforward translation. But there's so many cool ones. It's good to have the good, straightforward one, but, I have a feminine version here. There's so many different takes on it, and you can find a take that works for you. It's good to have the classic around just to check it out. One really amazing one is, did it get moved? No. I'm a little bit all over the place because I got a new bookshelf. Finally, I could finally get one. Thanks, Mom and Dad, who I think are watching, for my birthday gift of this industrial bookshelf that can fit a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm moving things around, so it's hard for me to find stuff sometimes. This is Gene Keys. This is great. This is so like obsessive, actually, because it's the 64 codons of the human DNA. So DNA comes in a 3-digit code, and so that would give up to 64 proteins to there's 4 protein code. There are 4 protein. Okay. Anyway, it works out to 64 codons in the DNA. That's the basis system of DNA. And so he lines up each of the hexagrams to a DNA codon that codes for one of the proteins that DNA creates. And so for each of the hexagrams, you have what it means in like a. But also then the repressive and the reactive part of what it means. So the parts, if this isn't going well, what's not good about it. But then also it has a gift. If you conquer the energy of this hexagram, conquer. I can be warlike in my prose too much sometimes. I was told by some Burning Man happy people that lived in community. But with these, you have the dark side that can come with them. But if you integrate it well, you get a gift. Of inner space, and then you get a city. A gift is like a regular human thing. And this, I just opened up the 35th gene key, and the gift is inner space and how to really break through to your heart, but something that we can like all achieve. But then the city is boundless bliss. The city is a Sanskrit word for a great gift or a blessing, and it can sometimes be a magic power. You've transcended like matter or time or something, but it can also be parts of yourself. And so the siddhi is you become a master in this. A Buddha of the 35th gene key, you would have boundlessness. You would feel bliss. You would actually live in that state where you realize you are connected to all of this, and yet you are. You exist through them, but you are also the entire thing. You know, boundlessness. If you've taken psychedelics, you know what I mean, or you meditated some, you probably get there. You can't really talk about it, but it's each of the hexagrams would have a gift and then a siddhi inside of it. It's a really cool thing. Is that the Hermetic Tarot deck on my wall? Yes. So the card I showed earlier, I don't know how behind I am on comments. The card I showed earlier was from the Alchemical Tarot, and this is by Robert Place, and it's just wonderful. I just got it for my birthday. But over here, the 3 decks I have on the wall, kind of. This is Crowley's Thoth deck, just a good classic to have. This is the Hermetic deck, as like you said, so this is a recreation of what the notes from the Order of the Golden Dawn. The Order of the Golden Dawn was one of the first magic organizations. Crowley was a part of it. There was a big like power grab inside. It all got ugly as stuff tends to do around magic or guruism or any of these isms, yoga. But in the beginning it was a bunch of really well-meaning people using magic. And they created their own tarot deck, but that was lost. And so this is a recreation by an artist who isn't the most amazing artist sometimes, but gets the symbols are there, and that's what matters the most. The symbology on it is really spot on. I think it's and Crowley ripped a bunch of it off because he was a ripper offer. And he took stuff to the next level. I mean, he did. Yes, Crowley was a son of a bitch, but he's also a good one to read his work because it's important and it's really influenced things, and he said a lot that you should at least know about. But take what you like, leave the rest. And then I also have from the New Orleans Voodoo deck, which is basically based on Ifa, I have written the different, about each of the cards, like my notes from the book on the card. I actually use that deck too much, though. I don't want to have it hanging on the wall. But I might have some new decks coming, and I might actually move this and expand it and add some decks. Okay, anyway, let me get a drink, and it's it's already 10 here? Whew, okay, this is kind of late for Papa. I think I will, it's 79 new messages? Oh man, I'm way behind. Okay, I can go for like 10 or 20 more minutes, but then I have to still clean the kitchen and then get to bed. Oh cool, you weren't gonna join it like this? Favorite account. Thank you so much. Bruce Damer was the guy. Bruce Damer, Damer. So he has a good podcast. All right. I am recording this, yes. I don't think TikTok lets you see it again, but I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel. So I have last week's on here too. Future me kicking ass, great. How do you know which act you're currently in your hero's journey? Great question. I don't know, because sometimes I feel like, I'm down here with some of these like later numbers, like in the tarot, like 19, 20, and then so often I get reminded by myself or my wife or something like, oh no, I'm up here at like 1 or 2. Like I'm just starting from like the fool to the magician who can like vaguely master himself. So personally, I think I'm like in between 0 and 1. I'm hoping to hit 1 by 44. That's my big act. You're kind of on all the acts at one time, and you need to know about all of them, and I think you switch some. I think you do have the big acts as a process, but there's also the smaller acts within. You're always kind of learning all of them. It might be like a video game where you're investing certain points in certain directions, and in this act you're investing most of your points here, but you're still always investing some points over here, so you're not lopsided. Yeah, the 2D girl who had her gem stolen. I like that. Grounded in the body. Yes, that's really important. I'm not great about it. I am way too often to get lost up in here, but I do try to do my meditation in the mornings, and I try to run. I was doing some judo, but it's hard with the kids and the time. So I'm looking for like another sports like men's thing. I also don't speak French well, and it's embarrassing and terrible now. It's been 2 years, so I don't love doing sports here in France because you're just an idiot all the time. Like, huh? Qu'est-ce que c'est? What's that? Anyway, but yeah, it's really important to stay grounded in your body. Absolutely. So, what do you consider source? Oh, I don't know. I think it's beyond us. I mean, I think there's something behind it all, and I think love is the answer. It sounds like, but you also see all this. Yeah, I don't know. Just came from number 5. Cool. You're not unqualified. Have confidence in your ability. That's good. Thanks. So that's great about the I Ching drawing. Strategy protection was succumbing to conspiratorial thinking. Oh man, it's tough. The conspiratorial thinking is so tough because, like, once I read my first book on the JFK thing, I'm like, oh, like they clearly shot, like the CIA clearly shot the president and didn't even bother to cover their tracks that much. And then it's like, oh, so if that's like that, how much more is the rest of the world like that? Because yeah, QAnon, I think that's very clearly a action by an intelligence agency in the world somewhere, whether it be within the U.S. or someone else screwing with the U.S. This was a game, an interactive game designed by somebody like other interactive games, except this team decided to make it seem like it was real to destabilize the U.S. And the world, and they did a really good job. But like that kind of what Q was a huge amount of work. That was many people working together to make that happen. So I'm almost sure that was an intelligence operation by somebody trying to screw with everything. So what they're saying, about the pedophiles at the top, I don't believe. I think that is a lie. I also believe that there are, like, the rich get away with immensely terrible things, and that stuff is happening. It's just not happening in a way that this red herring, this psyop that QAnon is basically a psyop by somebody, I believe. And so, but there are rich people at the top, and I know there are journalists that have been trying to look into this and they get murdered. That does happen, and you can see how that stuff would just get swept on the rug, just like cops in the drug war can it doesn't matter how many people know the truth because they're going to get away with it. Just like a whole bunch of cops knew JFK was going to get shot that day. Like, it kind of trickled down the ranks. Same thing in Malcolm X. Like, all the cops there, they saw it coming. They'd kind of gotten the word. He's getting it tonight, And who cares if they know? They're never going to tell anybody that matters. Like, yeah, they'll tell friends, and those friends will tell the reporters, and like the truth will come out, but no one responsible is going to get punished. It's haunting. It's really haunting. And then I started getting into reading about John Keel and the history of aliens here or whatever, and how that bleeds in from folklore. And it's like, is a whole bunch of human society a scam to just make us better farm animals for whoever's farming us? And it really led to a deep spiritual crisis that isn't really solved as much as I just have to take what I like and leave the rest, and know that I feel right on the stuff that feels right to me, and the rest I have to know about. Especially for me as a writer, I feel like I have to know about all these conspiracies in the dark side and study them, but that you also can't do, you only have so many fights in you. My fight is being a writer. That's about it. It feels rather hollow sometimes because I'm not out there on the picket lines, hardly ever. But I hope to be writing the books that those activists are reading to be better activists. And I feel like that's my place here. And we all have our place to do something to keep away the dark tide. And so often that's creating community somehow. Getting together and making to try to bring back a canceled sci-fi show, that's important. That's us coming together to do really important stuff. I'm off the topic of conspiratorial thinking. I think you have to just know that it's going to be unknowable. You're never going to solve, let alone, the dark side of what humans are doing to each other through the intelligence agencies, but what might be happening at the broader level of entities and things like that. And you try to do your best and do better in this life. And I think we're here to learn something and to do better in this life. That's all I can really, really know. And so don't look at the darkness too long. Balance it out, take a break. I stopped reading alien contact literature this year and I'm just going to switch to sci-fi for a while. I'm still reading about the history of human darkness and concentration camps and the history of black people in the United States and things like that, that I can handle and read about. The hardest, like some, and I've been reading about so long, but it's really hard. And you just can, I think the best thing is just have good people around you to keep you grounded and never get too worked up about it, because you're never going to know the answer. It's impossible. But it's important to like know what's out there. So yeah. Love Lewis Carroll. You share a birthday with Lewis Carroll. Cool. All right. Am I neurodivergent? That's so funny. I don't think so. It's very funny. People have been asking me this since that video blew up, because for the 2 or 3 weeks before, it seemed very clear that the TikTok algorithm was trying to convince me that I was autistic or ADHD. I hear people always saying, like, it seems like the algorithm's telling me that. I felt like that too. But I saw some really good video. I've never thought of myself as that, as either of those. And I saw some really powerful, I know I was on the spectrum, some of those spectrums some, but like a 1 or a 3 kind of level. And I saw some really good videos about people saying, stop just playing with this and saying, oh, I'm ADHD because I lost my car keys sometimes. Like, no, it really gets serious. And like, it's serious superpowers in some ways, but it's serious, like, differences that make life difficult in other ways. And I see that stuff, and I get where people are at, and I feel like I'm more like a little bit of that is in me, but not enough to think I am. I didn't think it up until like a month ago when the algorithm started to try to make me think it. So I would guess that's maybe a no. But I will bring it up to my therapist. I'm seeing him tomorrow, so. But I know what runs in the family is what they used to call manic depressive. I don't even know what they call it now, but that suits me. Whatever manic depressive is, that's me. I spent my whole life, I'm a writer, like up and down, like super energy, and then bam. And I'm getting less like that as I get older, but I'm also using less drugs that are taking me up and down too. So I think he's ND, his mind is amazing. Yeah, maybe. I certainly wouldn't mind. Like yeah, it's just not something I thought of for myself. So. All right. Yeah, just going through a little bit. You ordered the Bruno book and the Hermetic Tradition book, Rebecca? Awesome. Good for you. Yeah, they're amazing. There's just so... Ogun was a 5. It was used to Oshun being 5, Ogun being 4. Oh, that's their magic numbers. Each of the Ifa spirits has their own number that's sacred to them. On this deck, they put them on a certain number, but that's not their sacred number. That's like what they have is the energy of that number, Sephira. So yeah, that's why that's confusing. Triangle Bruce's name was Bruce Damer. Okay, just. Oh yeah, and so someone asked about the live again. Yeah, these are all going. This live is all going on my YouTube. I should do a podcast. I do a podcast. It's on pause right now as I was having as we were having our second baby, but it's the Lex Files, and you can find it on any of the major podcast platforms, and it is on my site lexpelger.com. All the back issues. It was sponsored by CV Sciences, who is the maker Plus CBD, who I still do a lot of consulting for, and they're just a great maker of CBD, and they have a really wide selection. And I appreciate that they were funding this weird show where I was talking about science and mysticism and psychedelics, and by the end, a lot of supernormal stuff. I had Alien, by Eric Davis was really good. And so the show was great. I did 2 seasons. I had like 50 plus episodes, and I want to get back to it. So yeah, I'm looking for a sponsor. I can't quite like spend the time recording for it right now, but I have a whole bunch of people lined up, and I can, so I'm gonna need an audio person and get back to it, a sponsor to help pay for them. But it's ready. All right, my wife's saying it's time for bed. I'm seeing so. Let me just go through the last of these really quick. I won't really be able to answer too much, but so what is in the Vatican vault? Don't I wish I knew. Because it's dark. Yeah, Nietzsche, because the darkness stares back. Lex and his books live. Yep. Do you have books? I have books. I think that's bipolar now. Yeah, maybe I'm bipolar. I don't know. Okay, cool. Yeah, my show is called The Lex Files. Yeah, and so I have everything in my link tree. And maybe just before I stop, I just mention what I have going on my link tree. So, for everyone who's here at the end, thank you so much. The cool thing going on in my life this week is I got this back out for sale again. So this is on Amazon. Wait a couple days to buy it because I have to check the proof copy, but you can see it on lexpelger.com right now. It's been free online for 5 years since I wrote it. Same with my other graphic novels. I'm gonna start a Discord, and so you'll see that. I have other videos planned for this week. I'll do some more number stuff, but also more History Wall, also more of my Science Mancy, and the AI stuff, because I know it's really close to my heart. I've been thinking about it my whole life, and now, like, the singularity is here. The singularity happened now in the year of our goddess 2023. Who would have guessed? ChatGPT was it, and now we all get it, that the world's about to change. And so I like the AI stuff, and I really appreciate all of your comments about that. So the other stuff is, if you go to my YouTube channel, I do a lot of cannabis education on there, and I also do consultations for people, for patients or for doctors. I talk to a lot of doctors about how to use cannabis in their practice, but I also do it for especially elderly people or patients in your life. It can be so helpful. So check out my how-to guides or my videos over there. You can ask me a question, and I'll respond on and make it a video. I also, the other thing I started doing is I Ching readings, and that's new. I've done a lot. I've just never done them for pay before, but you have to value your work. I think it makes everybody value it more. So if you'd be interested in that, it's at the bottom of my link tree. And yeah, I'm gonna do more videos about the I Ching because it's a superpower. It's the most important thing in my book I've ever found in my life. For making my life better. As much as I love Moby Dick, the I Ching is absolutely the most important book, and it's maybe the oldest book, and thousands of minds have worked on it to create it what it is. It's really like one giant human brain. There aren't many books like that, like the things like the Mahabharata of India and like these, and the fairy tales of many traditions have been reworked by so many minds until they're just a perfect, like they are the human brain in story form, which is just wonderful. So anyway, so that's the stuff that that's the stuff I got going on right now. Thank you everybody for showing up to my second ever live, and I'm gonna do it next week at the same time. It starts at 8:30 here in France, and that's 2:30 on the East Coast time. So thanks so much everybody for coming, and yeah, hit me up in the comments, and I'll make more videos. Okay, I love you all. Bye bye. Oh, and now it takes a second to fade out. Okay, that's it. Thanks everybody. Bye bye.